My name is Kaysen, and I am 26 years old. Death came without warning. That night, I was in a bad mood, so I drank some alcohol alone and wandered aimlessly on the road. A dump truck running a red light roared toward me. Before I could even feel the pain, I was sent flying. In the last second before my consciousness faded, only one thought crossed my mind: in my entire life, I had never even held a girl's hand. Yes, I am a 26-year-old virgin. The kind of virgin who has a wife. You may not believe it, but I have a wife named Lumina. It was an arranged marriage set by our families, decided by our grandfather's generation. In the previous life, we got married under pressure from both sets of parents. But for a year after the wedding, we never shared a bed. On our wedding night, I moved to the guest room, and after that, I avoided her as much as possible. I thought she was like me, forced into it, a victim of this marriage. So I didn't bother trying to win her over. We each lived our own lives, and sooner or later, we would get divorced. But now I'm about to die. Dying as a virgin. Just as my consciousness was about to sink into darkness, a translucent screen suddenly appeared before my eyes. It looked like some kind of social media interface. Posts scrolled across the screen: today's hot topics. OP, LOL, Kaysen died without ever knowing that his forced marriage wife was actually Lumina, a wealthy heiress who had a crush on him for 10 years. Number 1, what? Lumina? The only daughter of that billionaire tycoon family? The Lumina worth hundreds of billions? Number 2, OP, are you serious? With Lumina's figure and looks, her admirers line up from one end of the street to the other, and even around the corner. Would she have a secret crush on a loser like Kaysen? OP, absolutely true. Lumina has had a crush on Kaysen since high school and has kept a diary for 10 years. This arranged marriage wasn't forced by her family at all, she begged her grandfather to propose to Kaysen's family. Number 3, is Kaysen stupid? Having such a beautiful wife and not even touching her? OP, not only did he not touch her, on their wedding night he went straight to sleep in the guest room. With Lumina's perfect figure, curves in all the right places, how could he resist? I have a reasonable suspicion that he might be impotent. User 4, ha 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 ha, Kaysen died a virgin, that's hilarious. User 5, it's good that he's dead, now Lumina can marry her true love. I heard her childhood sweetheart has been waiting for her all along. User 6, I feel sorry for Lumina. She had a crush on him for 10 years, only to end up with a blockhead. I stared at these posts, my pupils shaking violently. Lumina, has a crush on me? That Lumina, who always wears a cold face every time we meet and can't stand even one extra word. Has had a crush on me for 10 years. And what's this about soulmate and childhood sweetheart? A surge of indescribable emotions welled up inside me: shock, regret, anger, and a hint of inexplicable smugness. A heiress from $100 billion family has a crush on me? Am I really that impressive? The next second, all thoughts were cut off. My consciousness sank completely into darkness. Kaysen. Kaysen. A clear yet slightly tense voice sounded in my ear. I snapped my eyes open. The glaring sunlight streamed in through the floor-to-ceiling windows, illuminating a girl's face. She was wearing a white dress, with long hair cascading over her shoulders, and her delicate features looked as if they had stepped out of a painting. What was most striking was her figure. The dress's waistline was tightly cinched, accentuating a stunning curve. It was Lumina. But this wasn't the cold, icy Lumina I remembered from after she got married. Instead, it was a younger version of Lumina. I looked down at myself, a clean shirt, no bloodstains. Then I looked up at my surroundings, a quiet cafe, with a bustling street outside the window. This wasn't the villa after marriage. This was the place where Lumina and I first officially met. I abruptly sat up straight. I had come back. Back to a year ago, the day of my blind date with Lumina. The content of those forum posts still lingered in my mind. Lumina has had a crush on you for 10 years, she begged her family to propose, perfect figure, curvy in all the right places. I took a deep breath. This time, I couldn't be a coward. Lumina frowned slightly, swirling the cup of black tea in her hand. Are you okay? I just asked you something. My voice trembled a little. What did you just say? Lumina pursed her lips. I said, you must already know about the marriage alliance, right? Are we, really going to get married like this? Exactly the same words. Exactly the same as in the previous life. She was acting. If the forum post was real, she must be secretly laughing inside right now. I decided to test the waters. I cleared my throat. I know. But you're being forced into this too, aren't you? Lumina lowered her eyes, her lashes trembling slightly. It seems there's no other choice. I deliberately said, why don't you talk to your family? Tell them you don't fancy me and want to call off the engagement. Lumina's expression visibly panicked for a moment. She quickly waved her hands, her voice rising half a pitch. No, no. My parents said if I keep lazing around at home all day, they'll cut off my allowance completely. Then, you should go and bring it up, she added, her tone carrying a hint of cautious probing. As expected. She's really afraid I'll call off the engagement. A sudden pang of bitterness surged in my heart. In my past life, I actually believed her words, thinking she was also being forced into it. On our wedding night, I moved straight to the guest room and kept my distance from her afterward. How sad she must have been. I deliberately sighed. I can't do it either. My whole family said that if I'm not even willing to make this small contribution of a marriage alliance, they'll kick me out of the house and let me fend for myself. That would be worse than being hit by a car. Lumina's lips curled up slightly, then quickly pressed down. She cupped her hands and said, my apologies, my apologies. So we're both in the same boat. I also smiled and raised my hand to wave. Likewise, likewise. Then how about we cooperate instead, she suggested proactively. I said, my dad said that if I agree to the arranged marriage, he'll give me an extra 1 million in living expenses. She quickly chimed in, really? That's great. My mom also said that if I agree, she'll give me an extra supplementary card. Haha, happy cooperation, wife. I extended my hand. She froze for a moment. Her ears visibly turned red. Happy cooperation, husband. The tips of our fingers barely touched before she quickly pulled them back. The wedding was grander than I had imagined. Both families had invited every relative and friend they could, filling the hotel lobby with over 100 tables. When the MC asked us to kiss, my past self had been hesitant, merely brushing her cheek in a symbolic gesture. This time, I didn't hold back. I directly wrapped my arm around Lumina's waist, leaned in, and kissed her. The moment our lips met, I felt her entire body stiffen. She hadn't expected it. Or rather, she hadn't thought I would actually go through with it. This kiss lasted less than 2 seconds, a brief touch before parting. But Lumina's face had already turned red to the roots of her ears, and even her neck was tinged with pink. Applause and laughter mixed together from the audience. Both sets of parents nodded in satisfaction, raising their glasses to toast the guests. On the wedding night, the bridal chamber was arranged on the top floor of the main house. According to my mom, the soundproofing was excellent, you young people can do whatever you want, we won't hear a thing downstairs. I almost lost it when I heard that. Lumina and I entered the room one after the other. Once the door was closed, the sounds from outside truly became inaudible, leaving a silence so profound that we could hear each other's breath. The bedroom was decorated in the luxurious style favored by the elders, rosewood furniture and a crystal chandelier. But the bed wasn't large, only 1.8 meters wide. For 2 people sleeping, a simple turn could bring them into contact. I scratched my head. Well, how about I sneak out and sleep somewhere else tonight? I regretted it as soon as I said it. How could I still be such a coward after being reborn? Lumina's ears turned slightly red as she whispered, it wouldn't be good if we got caught. Let's just sleep in the bed together. With that, she quickly walked toward the bathroom. I'll shower first. The bathroom door closed, and soon the sound of running water came through. I sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the blurry figure behind the frosted glass door, my mind involuntarily recalling the comments from the forum. Perfect figure, curves in all the right places. I hadn't noticed before, but now, indeed, it's really impressive. About 20 minutes later, the sound of water stopped. The bathroom door opened a crack, and steam rushed out. Lumina poked her head out, her cheeks flushed pink from the steam. I'm done washing. I forgot to grab my pajamas, she said in a very soft voice. Could you hand them to me? They're in the pink bag in my suitcase. Oh, sure. Right away. I fumbled with my suitcase, opened it, and found that bag. I pulled it out, a slip nightgown. Black, silk, with barely any fabric to speak of. I took a deep breath, walked to the bathroom door, turned my face away, and reached in with the nightgown. My fingertips brushed against her slightly damp hand, and we both flinched as if shocked. Thank you. After a rustling sound, the door opened. Lumina stepped out. My gaze involuntarily fell on her. The nightgown barely reached the top of her thighs, revealing two straight, slender legs. Her wet hair draped over her shoulders, and the pale skin below her collarbone dazzled under the dim light, making my head spin. She lowered her eyes, not daring to look at me, and shuffled over to the vanity table almost with the same hand and foot. I'll go dry my hair. The hairdryer hummed to life. I quickly grabbed my pajamas and rushed into the bathroom. When I came out after washing up, the main light in the bedroom was already off, leaving only two dim bedside lamps on. Lumina was lying on the right side of the bed, wrapped tightly in the blanket, with only her face visible. I dawdled over and sat down on the other side. The soft, large bed slightly sank under my weight, and her side seemed to tilt a little as well. Silence. Stillness. Less than 30 centimeters separated her and me. Then, sleep? I asked tentatively. Sleep. She quickly reached out and turned off the lamp on her side. The room fell into darkness. Only the small desk lamp on my side remained lit, casting a dim yellow glow. Rustling sounds came from under the covers. Then, a black, lace-trimmed bra was tossed out from under the covers. It landed right on my face. Sorry. I didn't mean to. Lumina's voice came from deep within the blanket, muffled and flustered. I just wanted to put it aside. It's fine. I picked up the bra. The fabric was delicate, carrying a faint scent and body warmth. So big, I couldn't help but exclaim. About a D cup. Lumina lifted the blanket to check inside, sounding a bit uncertain. Another silence fell. An ambiguous atmosphere lingered in the darkness. I turned off the light. Let's sleep. Yeah. In the darkness, I could hear her breathing, faster than usual, more erratic. I don't know how long passed. In a daze, I felt something pressing down on me. Warm, soft, carrying the pleasant scent of body wash. At some point, Lumina had rolled into my arms. She buried her face in my chest, one leg draped over my waist, clinging to me like a koala. I snapped wide awake. But I didn't dare move. Just as I was hesitating whether to respond, the leg draped over my waist suddenly kicked out. Not with much force, but at an impossibly tricky angle. Holy shit. I uncontrollably rolled off the bed. Thud. I landed solidly on the carpet. What's wrong? Lumina was startled awake by me, groggily propping herself up. The blanket slipped off her body. Through the moonlight filtering in from the gap in the curtains, I saw a large expanse of dazzling white. She looked blankly at the empty bed, then shifted her gaze downward. Her eyes met mine as I lay on the floor, my face frozen in a daze. The air stood still for 2 seconds. Ah! After a short, startled cry, she yanked the blanket over herself, leaving only her flushed face exposed. How did you fall off the bed? I lay on the floor, a dull ache in my side. You should be asking yourself that, miss. I propped myself up on the carpet and sat up. Sorry, honey, her voice muffled from under the blanket. I'm still not used to having someone beside me when I sleep. I didn't mean to kick you. I looked at her shy and embarrassed expression, wanting to laugh but not daring to. The skyline outside the window was tinged with a hint of pale dawn. Still sleeping? She asked. I rubbed my waist and stood up. No more sleeping. After being kicked awake by you, I feel like my meridians are all unblocked. Ah. Really? Am I that amazing? On the third day after our wedding, we moved out of the main residence and into the vacant standalone villa next door. The house was huge, spanning 3 floors with a basement. We spent the entire morning haphazardly stuffing luggage into various rooms and then collapsed on the sofa in the living room, staring blankly into space. Honey, I'm hungry, Lumina poked my calf with her toes. Order takeout, I said without even opening my eyes. I don't want to eat takeout anymore. Then go cook something. I don't know how. She said it with utter confidence. I don't know how either. I said it with even more confidence. Silent for a few seconds. Rock, paper, scissors. Let's go. Best of 3, I lost. I looked at the paper I had thrown and the scissors she excitedly held up, resigned myself to my fate, got up, and walked toward the kitchen. An hour later, in the hospital ward. Honey, are you okay? My voice was urgent. I'm okay. Lumina said weakly. Honey, I didn't expect your cooking to hit me this hard. I'm sorry, it's all my fault for giving you food poisoning. It's okay, you're lying in the hospital bed next to me anyway. I shouldn't have eaten so much. Lumina pouted. We stayed in the hospital for 2 days. On the day of discharge, I solemnly took out a bank card. Honey, let's hire a maid. Seconded. Married life has been more comfortable than I imagined. We have no jobs, no stress, and we sleep in every day until we naturally wake up. Lumina is slightly better at cooking than I am, limited to instant noodles and fried eggs. My cooking skills are in the negatives. So we hired 2 servants, one to cook and one to clean. And so our days drifted by in a lazy, leisurely manner. Until one day, that afternoon, I woke up from my nap and found Lumina wasn't by my side. There was a faint sound coming from upstairs. I tiptoed upstairs. As I approached the bedroom, a strange sound came from inside. A muffled, soft nasal tone, carrying an indescribable rhythm. My heart raced as I leaned toward the crack in the door. The door wasn't fully closed. Lumina stood at the desk, her back to the doorway. She was wearing that black spaghetti-strap nightgown, her hands resting on the desk, her body leaning slightly forward. That leg, longer than my life, was blatantly exposed. She swayed gently. Once. Once more. Again. She was rubbing against the corner of the desk. I froze at the door, feeling all the blood in my body rush to my head. Perhaps my gaze was too intense, or maybe I accidentally brushed against the door. Creak, the faint sound was amplified in the quiet room. Lumina spun around abruptly. Her eyes met mine through the crack in the door. Time seemed to freeze. The blush on her face spread from her cheeks to her neck, her eyes filled with panic and embarrassment. Ah! After a short, startled cry, she scrambled to stand up straight, frantically adjusting her nightgown. Why you? Why are you up here? I pushed the door open and stepped inside. I reached back and gently closed the door. Click. Silence fell. Only the chaotic sound of our breathing remained. I woke up and didn't see you, so I thought I'd come upstairs to check. My voice was a bit hoarse, and I couldn't help but take a step closer to her. She stepped back, her hands guarding in front of her. You saw everything? Yeah. My waist was a bit sore, so I was doing some yoga. She stammered, her eyes darting around everywhere. Oh, a sore waist. I stopped right in front of her, very close. Want me to rub it for you? Before she could answer, my hand was already pressed against her waist. Through the thin layer of silk fabric, I could feel the warmth of her skin. No, Her voice was as faint as a mosquito's buzz, but her body didn't pull away. Don't be nervous. I applied a little pressure with my palm. Even though this is my first time too, I've watched quite a few tutorial videos. The one you watched, was it legitimate? Her arms slowly wrapped around my neck. I lowered my head and kissed her lips. Unlike the brief, fleeting kiss at the wedding, this one was real, moist, and carried the hazy, sweet scent of a post-nap drowsiness. She responded awkwardly. Both of us were a little out of breath before we pulled apart slightly. Back to bed. I rubbed the tip of her nose. She softly hummed in agreement, burying her flushed face into my chest. We fell onto the soft bedding. She lifted her straight, slender legs and gently wrapped them around my waist. Honey, that, protection. What? Smuff. I froze for a moment, then snapped back to reality. Oh, right. Do we have one? The air went silent for a few seconds. We stared at each other, both reading the answer in each other's blank expressions. Maybe, let's look for it. 10 minutes later. Drawers, cabinets, suitcase compartments, all searched thoroughly. Nothing. Absolutely nothing. Maybe, let's not do it today. Lumina bit her lower lip, her eyes darting away. No way. I blurted out. She froze. I froze too. Looking at her shy yet expectant eyes, I gritted my teeth, stomped my foot, turned around, and rushed downstairs. The kitchen cabinet. Plastic wrap. I grabbed the roll of plastic wrap and dashed back to the bedroom. When Lumina saw what was in my hand, her eyes widened. Then she let out a snicker, quickly covering her mouth. What are you laughing at? Extraordinary times call for extraordinary measures. I peeled off the plastic wrap and studied how to wrap it. She laughed for quite a while before stopping, tears of laughter forming at the corners of her eyes. It feels so strange. Well, do you want to use it or not? Maybe, let's not use it. As she said this, her face was already red enough to steam. Should I continue? Yeah. Several words omitted here, readers can fill in the blanks themselves. 5 minutes later. The room fell silent again. The air was filled with the faint hum of the air conditioner and the lingering sound of unsteady breaths. Lumina curled up in my arms, her fingers unconsciously tracing circles on my arm. Honey. Stop sighing. 5 minutes is still impressive. I stared at the ceiling, momentarily at a loss for words. She shifted in my arms, finding a more comfortable position. Really, I don't mind. Then I really have to thank you. You're welcome. After all, we're husband and wife. No, I have to prove myself. I turned over and pressed down on top of her. 3 months into the marriage. Lumina and I had fully settled into a lazy life. Waking up naturally, eating meals prepared by the servants, playing games, and watching movies. Occasionally going to the mall for shopping sprees, occasionally taking short trips nearby. Life feels like being soaked in a honey jar. Until that afternoon, my dad called. His tone was very harsh. Kaysen, you've been married for 3 months now, and you're holed up at home every day. What kind of behavior is that? Starting today, all your cards are suspended. When you find a job, they'll be reinstated. Before I could react, he hung up. I stood there frozen. What's wrong, honey? Lumina noticed something off about me and put down her phone. I walked over to her with a gloomy face and leaned my head on her shoulder. Honey. I'm going to go bankrupt. What? Dad said he's going to cancel my cards. He said I haven't done anything since getting married and haven't brought any benefit to the family. I might have to rely on you to support me from now on. Her expression also fell. Honey, I can't support you. Why? She handed me her phone to show me, because my mom contacted me too. She said I've been holed up at home all day, doing nothing but eating and sleeping, not getting anything done. So she's going to cancel those cards and take back the properties and cars she gave me. The living room fell into a dead silence. We stared at each other, seeing the same bewilderment in each other's eyes. Honey, are we going to sleep under a bridge? I heard it's cold under the bridge at night, and there are mosquitoes. Her voice started to crack as she snuggled closer into my arms. I held her close, my mind going blank. Don't be afraid, sweetheart. I'll protect you. Honey, do you have a plan? No. A sense of despair was spreading. Just as we were holding each other, almost starting to discuss whether to go to the overpass in the south of the city or the culvert in the north, a sudden flash of inspiration struck my mind. Wait. Lumina was startled by me. What's wrong? I pointed at the living room. This house. This villa. It's under both of our names. It's joint property. Right? She blinked her eyes and slowly realized, oh right, my mom said at the time that this counts as part of my dowry, but the property rights are jointly owned by the couple. I excitedly grabbed her shoulders, so. We don't have to sleep under a bridge. Just as joy began to rise, the cold water of reality came pouring down. But, we have a place to live, but what about food? What about utilities, gas, and property management fees? What about my skincare products and the servants' wages? Lumina counted on her fingers, her face growing more troubled with each item. Another suffocating silence. Lumina unconsciously tugged at the hem of her nightgown. Suddenly, her hand froze. Honey. Her voice changed pitch. The bride price. And my dowry. When we got married, the bride price your family gave, plus the cash portion of my dowry from my family. My mom deposited it all into my card at the time. I've never touched it. I remembered too. How much? We both rushed into the bedroom and pulled out that bank card. Lumina fumbled to log into the mobile banking app, entering the card number and password. The few seconds of waiting felt as long as a century. The screen flickered. The balance appeared. We leaned in close to the phone, carefully counting the string of zeros. Ones, tens, hundreds, thousands, 10,000s, 100,000s, millions, 10 millions, hundreds of millions. 200 million. A full 200 million. The air froze for a few seconds. Honey. Lumina turned her head, her eyes wide open. Darling. I turned around too, my expression probably just as dazed as hers. Then, almost at the same time, we both leaped up from the floor, clutching our phones and bank cards as we jumped and danced around the bedroom. We have money to spend. Honey. We have money again. Lumina pounced on me, wrapping her arms around my neck and her legs around my waist, bouncing around excitedly. Not just rich. Honey, we can't spend it all, we simply can't. I spun her around in my arms until we were both dizzy and tumbled onto the bed together. She lay on my chest, catching her breath, her eyes shining as if filled with stars. She poked my cheek. Honey, should we celebrate? I flipped over and pinned her beneath me. How do you want to celebrate? We've got money, so we can spend it however we want. She nodded vigorously. Right. So, what's the first thing we do? Duo Q, we said in unison. And so our days passed sweetly and happily. I always thought this was the change brought about by my rebirth. Fate took a quiet turn at a certain moment, allowing Lumina and me to live a life of happiness completely different from our previous life. Until that afternoon. On a whim, I decided to sort through some dusty luggage in the study. In a cardboard box, there were a few notebooks. Their covers were light blue, with slightly curled edges. I casually flipped one open. At first, there were scattered notes. June 7th, went to see Dr. Chen again today. She said I'm doing well. June 10th, dreamed of him again. I was so happy in the dream. June 12th, so annoying. My mind is full of him. It's all his fault, all his fault. June 17th, Grandpa asked if I wanted to get married. I said yes. Of course, that person has to be you. I was stunned. Who is that person? I kept flipping through. June 24th, Grandpa brought good news, I'm going to have an arranged marriage. But I have to meet him in public first. So annoying. June 28th, he really didn't recognize me, but that's okay, as long as he was captivated by my beauty. July 8th, on our wedding night, he actually went to sleep in the guest room. What kind of husband does that? July 9th, I really want to launch a night raid. July 10th, I really want to launch a night raid. July 11th, I really want to go on a night raid. I stared at these diary entries, my mind buzzing. Did I write this? I continued flipping through. October 25th, I'm going crazy. When will he finally get a clue? December 23rd, Dr. Chen said my condition is unstable and recommended proactive intervention. December 25th, put some sleeping pills, sat on his face and got my revenge hard. Humph. May 5th, made up my mind. I'll use that plan. Mom and Dad and my in-laws went more smoothly than I imagined. June 20th, hypnosis preliminarily completed, memory implantation points confirmed. June 25th, arranged for Felix to invite him out for drinks today, said there would be a group of young girls. Ha, men. On June 26th, he woke up at the preset awakening point, and the hypnosis was successful. My wooden husband has finally come to his senses. The diary slipped from my hand and fell onto the carpet with a dull thud. I stood in the dim light of the study, my mind completely blank. No car accident. No forum. No rebirth. It was all an act. Lumina, in collusion with the psychologist, both sets of parents, and everyone else, had crafted a massive script for me. What, secret crush for 10 years, and, billion-dollar heiress, all implanted memories. What, popular forum post, all pre-designed psychological cues. Every move I made, every step I took after my rebirth, was all within her calculations. Ha! What a grand scheme this is. I was staring blankly at the open diary. A sound came from downstairs. It was Lumina shuffling across the wooden floor in her slippers. The footsteps grew closer. Finally, they stopped at the study door. Honey, what are you hiding in here for? Ha, this notebook. She leaned halfway in, holding a can of ice-cold cola. Her smile froze for a moment. The air was silent for a few seconds. Lumina blinked, walked in, and casually closed the door behind her. She leaned in to glance at the open page, her face slowly turning a shy red. You saw everything? She curled up in the beanbag chair next to me, hugging her knees, tilting her head to look at me. Yeah. Are you mad? I thought about it. I was a little angry. I felt like a rabbit being carefully raised, every step clearly arranged for me. But, looking at her cautious eyes and a can of iced Coke in her hand, I suddenly couldn't stay angry. I answered honestly, I was a little angry, feeling like I was being set up. But I can't stay mad. Lumina's eyes lit up. Really? Really? She let out a sigh of relief and handed me the cola. She asked, so, do you remember me? That summer, you were the one who started it. That summer. I tried to recall. At the age of 11, I was sent to an overseas estate for the summer. A girl lived there, 2 years younger than me, who always hid in her room and never came out. Mom said that little girl had autism and didn't like talking to people. But I was never one to sit still. I made her watch cartoons with me, played video games with her, and even forced her to play bride and groom with me. At first, she ignored me, but gradually she started to smile. Later, she began seeking me out to play. When that summer ended, she cried her heart out. She said, "You have to remember me." Okay, I casually agreed. Then I forgot. Completely forgot. I stared blankly at the Lumina in front of me. That little girl, was you? She nodded, her eyes slightly red. Her voice was very soft. After you left, I went back to the way I was before. I didn't talk, didn't eat, didn't sleep. My family had no choice but to send me to see a psychologist. Dr. Chen has been handling my case ever since. And then? She smiled. Then it took me 3 years to slowly get better. But I never forgot you. I asked my grandfather to find out who you were, track down your family's address, and discovered that your grandfather and my grandfather were brothers in arms who would go through fire and water for each other. So I asked my grandfather to propose marriage on my behalf. At first, he was a bit embarrassed, saying you weren't good enough for me. I told him I'd never marry anyone else then. He had no choice but to go drink with your grandfather. As they drank, the two old men made the decision on the spot. I opened my mouth, not knowing what to say. Lumina's voice carried a hint of grievance. But after you met me, you couldn't even remember who I was. Every time we met, you were so polite, and after barely 3 sentences, the conversation would fall flat. On our wedding night, you moved straight to the guest room. I waited for 3 months, and you didn't react at all. I went to see Dr. Chen, and she said my condition was unstable. If things continued like this, there might be a relapse. So she came up with this idea for me. I looked into her eyes. This idea you're talking about, you want me to fake my own death? Yeah. She lowered her head. The car accident was fake, the dump truck was fake, the forum was fake, and all those bullet comments in your head were hypnotically implanted. Dr. Chen said you're someone who responds to tough love, not soft persuasion. If we didn't give you a shock, you'd never take the initiative. So you conspired with the whole family to deceive me? Yeah. Even my parents knew. Yeah. My in-laws were very cooperative. The card-cutting trick was my mother-in-law's idea. I was silent for a long time. Lumina secretly glanced up at me, then quickly lowered her head. If you're angry, you can scold me. You can even hit me. But you can't abandon me. You have no idea how scared I was when I wrote that diary. Afraid you'd see it, and afraid you wouldn't. Afraid you'd be angry, and afraid you wouldn't be. I actually deliberately put the diary in the cardboard box today. I think it's time for you to know. I don't want to lie to you anymore. As she spoke, her voice trembled a little. I reached out and pinched her cheek. Silly. I said you're silly. She was stunned. I sighed. Such a big deal, and you've been carrying it alone for so long. If you had told me earlier, I wouldn't have ended up sleeping in the guest room on our wedding night. She retorted softly. But you can't remember, can you? I said, if I can't remember, you can remind me. How? Should I just say, hello, I'm the autistic girl you abandoned when we were kids the moment we meet? Wouldn't you be scared off? I thought about it. Fair point. I pulled her into my arms. All right. I'm not mad. Really? Really? Your plan is absurd, but the results are decent. She nuzzled against me like a kitten. Then, will you treat me well in the future? Haven't I been treating you well enough? Not enough. Then I'll keep working hard. Honey. Tell me the truth, when it was only 5 minutes the first time, were you really nervous? Shut up. Hee. The sunset outside the window streamed into the study, painting everything in warm gold. Holding Lumina, I suddenly felt, being designed might not be such a bad thing after all. In the 3rd year of marriage, life remained the same, waking up naturally, playing games, petting the cat, and fighting with Lumina over the last slice of pizza. The only difference was that my cooking had evolved from deadly poison to barely edible. Lumina's comment was, "You've gone from a negative score to 0, honey, you're amazing." Thanks, I think I'm pretty impressive too. That afternoon, I had just finished a ranked match when Lumina walked out of the kitchen carrying a plate of cut fruit. She approached the coffee table, then suddenly covered her mouth and rushed into the bathroom, her face turning pale. The sound of dry heaving came from inside. I froze and followed her. Did you eat something bad? She shook her head, rinsed her mouth, but still looked unwell. It's been like this for the past few days. I've been feeling nauseous in the mornings too. A loud buzz went off in my head. Honey, how long has it been since your last period? Lumina counted on her fingers, and her expression gradually froze. It's more than 10 days late. We locked eyes for 2 seconds. Then we both rushed out at the same time. You change your pants. You grab the car keys first. 10 minutes later, at the pharmacy near the community entrance. We walked in together. I said nervously, pregnancy tests, the most expensive ones, give me 3. The shop assistant handed it over with a smile, good luck to you. The 3 minutes waiting for the results at home were the longest 3 minutes of my life. Lumina went into the bathroom, and I paced back and forth by the door. 2 cats crouched by the hallway, tilting their heads to watch me. What are you looking at? Never seen someone about to become a dad. The door opened. Lumina stood at the entrance, holding a pregnancy test in her hand, her eyes red. 2 lines. Honey, you're going to be a dad. I hugged her tightly and spun her around 3 times in the hallway, until she started patting my shoulder. Put me down. I'm going to be sick. Oh, sorry. On the way to the hospital for confirmation, Lumina kept clutching the ultrasound appointment slip, her palm sweaty. I gave her hand a squeeze. What are you nervous about? I'm afraid it might be a mistake. If it's wrong, we'll just keep trying. She shot me a glare, but the corners of her mouth couldn't help curling up. In the ultrasound room, the doctor pointed at a tiny, shimmering spot on the screen and said, "See this? It's the fetal heartbeat. 6 weeks along, and very healthy." Lumina's tears fell instantly. My nose stung too, but I held it together. I'm a father now, I can't cry. As we walked out of the hospital, the sunlight was beautiful. Lumina held my arm, her other hand resting on her still flat belly. Honey, do you think he'll look like you or me? Like you, that would be prettier. What if he inherits your intelligence? Lumina, what do you mean by that? She smiled, her eyes curving into crescents as she stood on tiptoe and kissed my cheek. Just kidding. It doesn't matter who you look like, as long as it's you. I wrapped my arms around her waist, lowered my head, and kissed her hair. Come on, let's go blow up the group chat. The 6-person family chat had already been renamed Mystery Surprise. I posted a photo of the ultrasound report along with a message, confirmed. 6 weeks. You're all going to be grandparents. My mom, I'm going to be a grandma. My dad, great. Excellent, absolutely wonderful. Lumina's mom, my daughter is amazing. At Kaysen, take good care of her, don't let her do any work. Lumina's dad, at Kaysen, kid, drive slowly and stay safe. Also, congratulations. My mom added another sentence, at Kaysen at Lumina, you 2 move back home immediately. No refusing. I want to take care of my daughter-in-law myself. Lumina leaned on my shoulder, looking at the phone screen and laughing out loud. Honey, do you think we can escape this time? I looked at the messages flooding the group chat and sighed, no escaping. Let's just accept it. So, we're moving back. I put away my phone and pinched her cheek. Move back in. Besides, we have a place to freeload meals now, and we can save some money too. Lumina's eyes lit up. Good point. So, shall we go mooch dinner now? Let's go. Time to head home. The setting sun stretched the 2 shadows long, overlapping them like a painting.